So it's some 15 months, as you just said, since the launch of the Durham Commission. How's the report been received, both here and more widely internationally?
There was enormous interest, I think, in the report, intrinsically because there are a large number of people who feel very strongly that creativity needs to form a larger part of the methodology and the practice within schools. But also because I think there had been a pent up, in this country at least, concern that over the last 10 years, we've seen a narrowing of the curriculum.
Wales has a very exciting new curriculum which puts creativity stage centre. And I just wondered if I could take you back to England, or take you forward to England. And specifically, you mentioned just now the sense that many teachers reported in the Durham Commission that they felt the curriculum had been squeezed. And the two key axes in England of Ofsted on the one hand and the Department for Education on the other. I just wondered whether you could stand back and reflect about the degree of your optimism that we might make significant progress in schools in England.
As I said earlier, Bill, I had this strong sense, and that's shared by many other people, that the curriculum had narrowed somewhat. And that was set against the background of both work by Ofsted and also the government's proposals for the EBAC, as originally conceived by Michael Gove and being taken through by successive secretaries of state. The EBAC itself, of course, creates some problems, in particular for art subjects, finding themselves, as we said, squeezed out of the timetable in order to give prominence to those subjects that come within the EBAC framework. But beyond that, the attitude of Ofsted had increasingly been to emphasize success in examinations, success in assessment of the examinations kind, rather than a broader assessment. And that concentration was, as I say, leading to an enormous squeeze on not just art subjects, but many other subjects too. When we began the process of thinking about the commission, we had the opportunity to have some discussions with Amanda Spielman, who had at that point fairly recently been appointed as Chief Inspector and Director of Ofsted, and discovered that she actually had a real interest in seeing a somewhat broader curriculum. And since that point, she's made a number of speeches where she's taken that view forward, and she has expressed a recognition that the examination system should not be the only system of assessment. There needs to be a broader view taken. And so I think Durham, in a sense, plays into that. Durham reinforces that. Durham provides the evidence for that kind of thinking. And I'm hopeful that over the next 2 to 3 years, we will see a move away from teaching to the mark and a broader view taken. That depends partly on the response of the Department for Education. And they have been very committed to raising standards. They've been very committed to a knowledge-based curriculum. I think that the lessons of the pandemic show that young people from the age, well, throughout school, but particularly in secondary school, have been expressing a wish for a different kind of curriculum, a curriculum that helps them be resilient, become adaptable, able to respond to change, and indeed the kind of challenges that they have faced over the past year. And I think that the recommendations of Durham and the kind of thinking that underpins Durham will, I believe, gradually gain greater currency.
I'd like to think that the Ofsted newish framework and its emphasis on schools, three I's, declaring their intent and then their implementation and then their impact. I'm hopeful that the work that you've laid the ground for here with the Durham Commission may give schools some of the evidence base that they need, and especially the new creativity collaboratives. So one I guess could take a pretty optimistic picture there, but I'm just going to come back one more time on the English context. Forgive me, because I know those watching you will be interested in your thoughts here. How we could make the argument that you make so effectively in the report, which is that it's not an either or, that you can have, indeed you need knowledge and the extremes of creativity, albeit everyday creativity, and that it's not an alternative to standards. And I just wondered if you might have a few words of encouragement for the teachers in England and school leaders in England who will be watching this.
Well, obviously, Durham, the purpose of Durham was to gather together the evidence from a wide range of schools and practitioners to examine the work that had already been done, the evidence that was available. So we were very much building on other people's achievements. We weren't inventing, and I think the reception for the report in October 2019 showed that there was widespread recognition that the points needed to be made, the arguments were there, the evidence was there. I think that in Wales, we've seen over the past 5 years a really rapid move towards having a knowledge-based curriculum that also has a creative dimension to it.
Yeah.
No one's suggesting that we should abandon knowledge. The greatest practitioners in science, the arts, the humanities have always been those who have knowledge. You need a sound-based foundation on which to then exercise those attributes that we define as being creative, having imagination, being able to conceive something which is new, express a personal vision. These are all things that depend on having a sound knowledge that you can then, as it were, literally manipulate and use. I do believe that there are many schools in England that are already doing many of the things that we wish to see them do. I would simply, and I think the Arts Council and the Durham Commission would simply like to see that as a standard that all schools aspire to, rather than simply some.